In Joburg, City Power says it's now recommissioned an open gas turbine in Fordsburg that will add 50 megawatts to the city's grid. We've seen other cities also trying to generate their own power. Cape Town has a small hydroelectric dam. Most of the major metros have said they want to buy their own electricity from independent producers. Thami Mathiso is in charge of new business at City Power. Thami, good afternoon to you. I had no idea there was such a thing as a gas turbine in Fordsburg. It's one of the most densely populated parts of the city. How old is it? How long has it actually been there for?
Yeah, good afternoon to you, Stephen, and good afternoon to the viewers. Actually, that open gas turbine has been there from 1977, and it's actually almost my age. It's been there. It was last decommissioned, I think, at around the 80s. We recommissioned it in 2010 during the World Cup preparations, just to have additional capacity. And now, during the load shedding crisis, we then wanted to recommission it again.
How long has it taken to recommission it? I mean, we're talking about something that's as old as we are.
Yeah, most definitely. And one of the things that we needed to do was to bring it on board as soon as we can. And we started the work. We started with the feasibilities almost a year ago, but we started with the actual work on the gas turbines around December. And we brought in the original equipment manufacturers to come and probe into the gas turbine to check the cracks and a number of things. So we had to fix all those things, from the tanks to the fuel pumps into the engine itself. It's actually running on a Concorde engine. That's what I'm told by our engineers.
So engine, you mean Concorde the plane?
A Concorde plane, yeah. So it actually has two Concorde engines in that OCGT, and it's actually been there from 1977.
Sure. The cost of it, and I have to ask, is it sort of worth doing? Obviously, always having electricity is, better than the cost of not having electricity, but it can't have been cheap.
Most definitely, and one of the things that we looked into to run a kilowatt hour on the open cycle gas turbine is around 5 rands, which is slightly more than Eskom. But what we looked into is a cost of unserved energy to businesses and to the economy of Johannesburg and Gauteng. And that is around 80 rands or 100 rands per kilowatt hour. And we had to look into that. And one of the things that we want to do to mitigate the cost and to make sure that we can balance the cost of running the open cycle gas turbine is to look into businesses that are quite interested and sell the energy to them.
Okay. You won't run it all the time, right? I mean, are you going to use it as a peaking plant, as Eskom does with its much bigger open-cycle gas turbines? Most
definitely. So we intend to use it as a load-shedding mitigation. We can only run it for about 8 hours in a day. So we understand that at that time there will be businesses who are quite interested in terms of having the energy from that, and we can be able to run it for that 8 hours.
It must make a huge noise. I mean, those things...
Not at all. In fact, when you stand next to it, it feels like you're in the airport. So the first start, how it's designed, it's actually pulls the air into the turbines, and it turns the turbines itself before the engine kicks in. So that air runs for like 5 minutes, and when the blades are starting to move, the engine kicks in, and then it starts using the fuel to turn the diesel, to turn the engine. And eventually, it goes into what we call a cruise control, which is around 3,000 revs per minute.
Okay, so 3,000 revs per minute is a cruise control.
Yeah.
What kind of actual fuel does it use? Is it gas? Is it diesel? I know some of these things can be changed. What kind of fuel does it use?
So currently it's actually compatible to use both diesel and jet fuel. And for now, for us to commission it, we've used diesel. But we have been advised by the OEM that it will be more efficient to use jet fuel. And I think beyond today, we'll be looking into the supply of jet fuel and make sure that we can use it there in that open cycle gas turbine.
Because these things go through fuel very quickly. I mean, that's why the airport, OR Tambo, I presume Lanseria, have their own tanking systems and their own pipes direct from the refineries to get the jet fuel there. You'd have to carry the jet fuel through on tankers, wouldn't you?
Yeah, most definitely. So we've got two tanks there. Each carries around 600,000 liters, or 1.2 million liters we can carry on site. And we bring it through the tankers, and I think that's one of the things that we had to work on to make sure that by the time we move into jet fuel, we have the logistics in place.
So 50 megawatts, I mean, it's not a huge amount, but it does matter. I was trying to remember the total demand for Joburg. It's about 2,000 megawatts, isn't it?
Yeah, the total peak demand for Joburg is 2,400 megawatts. But if you compare it with other cities like Lesedi in Heidelberg and other cities, you can literally run that city with that OCGT.
Do you have plans to look at other power generation as well? There was a time when you would buy electricity from the Kelvin power station. I don't know if that contract is still going. But are you going to look at other places where you can get electricity from outside of Eskom?
Yeah, as part of our energy mix, we intend to procure energy. In November, we announced that we have started a process to procure energy from IPPs. We've given them 3-year contracts, which they are bringing a combined capacity of around 90 megawatts. So we are still negotiating willing with Eskom because some of them are coming from outside the city. So we have to arrange in terms of them wheeling power into the city power grid. We are looking into firing another gas turbine, which is around Johannesburg in a place called Durban Street. We intend to fire that one. Is around 50 megawatt. We've got a place which was also vandalized down close to SABC, which is called Cottesloe. We intend to also, and combine that, we intend to probably bring another about 800 megawatts into our grid.
I'm a little surprised that it's taken so long to get these old turbines up and running when we've had load shedding for such a long time. And I hate to be this person, Thami, but we've had 22 days of no load shedding. And obviously for you, buying electricity from Eskom is cheaper than running a gas turbine. But it's taken a long time. I mean, we've been in a crisis for a long time. Did it not make sense to bring these turbines back earlier? Most
definitely. I think it made sense for us to. We actually had a 10-point plan on how we can mitigate load shedding. But I think one of the key things that was affecting us was the issue of funding. And that's why we partnered with Gauteng Province for them to fund us into refurbishing those gas turbines. So I think one of the key things as a municipality that we're faced with is the issue of funding to make sure that we can bring the money to make sure that we can make a capital investment in refurbishing those open cycle gas turbines.
One of the reasons we haven't had load shedding for the last, we're on day 22 now, is that the private sector and private homeowners have invested in solar and other plants themselves. And we know that roughly we're looking at about 4,000 or 5,000 megawatts of generating capacity has been coming in for people that they've generated themselves. Do you know in Joburg, do you have any idea of how demand for power has decreased because people are doing it themselves? Has anyone done that maths?
We've done that maths, and we've done it in two ways, both firstly from a process that we started with, which is a voluntary disclosure, where we've requested customers to come forward, everybody with a solar system or generating capacity in their properties, where we can also be able to negotiate with them to feed into the grid so that we can have additional power. And that has actually given us a part of about 150 megawatts coming into the grid. But what we've seen on the bulk purchases side, on the demand side, we've seen a almost 15% drop, which is around 1,000 megawatts, because we were sitting at 9,000 megawatt hours that we're buying from Eskom, and what we've seen is that we've dropped up to about 9,000. We're sitting at 10,000, we dropped to about 9,000. So we've seen that reduction, and we've actually looked into that from the demand perspective and also from the load shedding. So we are doing the maths there to actually see, is it the result of the load shedding, or is it the result of people that are injecting into the grid, or that are having their own generating capability. But what we've seen now from the own generating capability is around 150 megawatts.
So you say 15%?
Yeah, it's about 15% of our load.
That's a huge reduction. I mean, that's 15, I mean, in so many different directions, because that's 15% less revenue you're making.
Yeah.
But it also means that 15% of the demand, so that's not 15% of the people, not a chance, but 15% of the demand has gone down because people are doing it for themselves. That's a huge figure.
It is a massive figure, and I think that's one of the reasons that we needed to come up with a plan to turn around the situation. And our plan encompasses, also includes the businesses and customers who are City of Johannesburg customers, to see what is it that they can do to actually bring into the power into the grid. And I think we encourage the customers to do that, but whilst we also from our side are doing as much as we can to actually bring additional capacity. Because we have been approached by some businesses as City Power who say we do not have not exactly the means, but for what it takes in terms of what the plants that we are running. We've got people who are plastic smelters, bakeries, who says, when I run my dough, by the time that you hit me with load shedding, the whole production line has actually been spoiled. And we've looked into issues of load curtailment, where we say you can reduce the 5% from our side instead of us switching off the whole area. So we've been quite proactive with business customers to see and find ways for them to be able to survive during this load shedding.
Thami Mathiso, thank you. In charge of new business at City Power, really do appreciate the time. In a moment,